The room is darker than you expected. Only a single candle flickers near the window. Its small flame sways as if it breathes, pulling in drafts that smell of smoke, wax, and something faintly metallic. Somewhere outside, a cart rattles over cobblestones, its wooden wheels echoing against the stone walls of the narrow Roman street. A rooster crows in the distance, too early and too tired, as though even he regrets being awake. The city is not silent, not truly, but it has that fragile quiet that only lives in the few moments before dawn. So, before we sink deeper into this moment, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, let the light dim, let the fan hum quietly, and let's drift into tonight's story together. You wake before sunrise, long before the sky even thinks about brightening. The air inside the workshop is cool, damp, and heavy with the memory of yesterday's melted wax. You pull the rough blanket from your shoulders and sit up, feeling the cold floor against your bare feet. The single candle that burns beside you is nearly finished, its stub bent like a tired soldier, the wax pooled around its base in white folds. The workshop is small, no larger than a stall at the market. The shelves are cluttered with clay molds, metal rods, half-used tallow blocks, and small bundles of reeds meant for wicks. The tools of your trade are simple, almost primitive. Yet every object in this room carries the weight of repetition. You have done this so many times that your body moves without thinking. A faint hiss comes from the corner where last night's batch cools in its molds. You rise and walk over, pulling a heavy cloth aside. There they are, 12 perfect candles, pale and smooth as bones, waiting to be freed from their shapes. You pick one up, run your finger along its edge, and nod. The texture is right, the color clean, the base firm, it will burn evenly. Outside, Rome still sleeps. The Sabura district, where you live and work, is a web of alleys that twist like thought itself. It is the city's heartbeat, crowded, smoky, alive. The wealthier parts of Rome, with their open courtyards and marble fountains, are still silent. Here, though, the noise never truly stops. Even now, before dawn, you can hear the sound of someone pouring water into a bucket, a dog barking once and then again, the faint scraping of a broom against a doorway. You light a small oil lamp and place it under the bronze pot that holds the tallow. The fat begins to soften and shift, turning from solid white to liquid gold. The smell grows stronger, earthy, and animal. You do not flinch at it anymore. To most people, it is unpleasant, but to you, it smells like work, like stability, like life continuing. Historians still argue whether Roman candles were considered luxury items or common necessities. The truth, as always, sits somewhere in between. The rich preferred lamps filled with fine olive oil, their flames steady and bright. But candles were portable, simple, and forgiving. A poor man's light, a traveler's friend, a craftsman's pride. You take a bundle of papyrus reeds and trim them to length. They will form the wicks. Some makers use linen threads, but you find the papyrus burns slower and straighter. A small superstition clings to the act, that a steady wick means a steady mind. You whisper a small phrase as you dip each one into the melted tallow. Lux me in tenebris, meaning my light in the darkness. The phrase is old. You learned it from your father, who learned it from his own father. He used to say that no man truly owns the flame. He only borrows it for a time. Maybe that is true. Maybe it is why every candle feels like a small piece of borrowed life. As you stir the pot, the workshop grows warmer. The walls begin to glisten slightly from the heat. A thin line of smoke curls up to the ceiling. You can hear the wax bubbling softly, a comforting sound. You test the temperature with a wooden stick. It is ready. Carefully, you pour the liquid into the molds, one by one, steady as if pouring water into a sleeping child's hands. While the wax sets, you move to the window and push it open. The first grey light of dawn touches the edge of the rooftops. Across the alley, a woman sweeps her doorway, humming a slow tune. A young boy chases a stray chicken down the street. Two men argue in low voices about the price of grain. The city is beginning to stretch and wake, its breath filling the air with noise and motion. You return to your table and begin trimming yesterday's batch. Each candle must be perfect, smooth, balanced, without cracks or air pockets. The rich might not notice, but the priests will. They claim that an uneven burn insults the gods. There is a saying among craftsmen, a bad candle brings a short prayer. You do not believe in omens, not really, but you still take care. A small bronze statue of Vulcan, the god of fire and forge, stands on a shelf above your table. His eyes catch the flicker of the oil lamp. You touch your fingers to the statue's base for luck. It is less about faith and more about habit. The same way you always tie your apron, the same way. Always heat the wax clockwise, never counterclockwise. Habits are a candle maker's religion. A knock comes at the door. You glance up, half expecting trouble, but it is only Flavia, the neighbor's daughter. She carries a small jug of milk and a grin too wide for this early hour. Mother says you forgot your change yesterday, she says, handing you a few copper coins. You thank her, slipping a spare candle into her hand. She beams and runs off, her footsteps echoing down the alley. You pour another batch. This one is thicker, meant for temple offerings. The molds clink softly as you set them on the stone ledge. You will need to make at least 30 today, more if the temple messenger returns. Demand has grown since the last full moon. There is a fringe theory, whispered among old scholars, that early Roman candles sometimes contained bits of crushed bone or herbs meant to purify the flame. You have never tried that, though you have seen others attempt it. The result is always the same. A strange, uneven burn and a smell that clings to the walls. Still, it fascinates you that even in the most practical crafts, people always reach for superstition. The sun finally breaks over the rooftops, painting the workshop in pale gold. You step outside for a moment, stretching your back, feeling the city fully awake now. The baker down the street has opened his shutters, the smell of warm bread floating through the air. Somewhere farther away, the metallic clang of a blacksmith's hammer rings in steady rhythm. You breathe deeply and glance back at the small light flickering through your doorway. The candle's flame seems to dance, as if proud of itself. You smile faintly. The day will be long, filled with sweat, heat, and quiet repetition. But in these first few moments of morning, everything feels in balance. A pigeon lands on the ledge beside you, cooing softly. You flick a breadcrumb its way. The world hums gently. The light grows stronger. Inside your workshop, a new batch of candles begins to cool. Silent, patient, waiting to shine. The smell of tallow lingers on your hands. You rub them together and glance at the pile of finished pieces. Each one is small, but together they can fill an entire villa with light. There is something poetic about that you, a simple craftsman in a forgotten alley, hold the power to bring brightness into the homes of senators, priests, and strangers alike. You step back inside, pull the curtain closed, and let the glow fill the room once more. The day has only just begun, and already the fire hums with quiet promise. The flame trembles as the morning breeze slips through the cracks in the shutters. Outside, the first true light of day begins to paint the walls a soft orange. You stand near the work table, rolling your shoulders, still sore from the weight of yesterday's work. The air inside the workshop is alive now, thicker, louder, touched with the faint crackle of heating tallow and the bubbling sigh of wax softening again. This is your favorite moment of the day, that small stretch of time between silence and noise, between darkness and work. You can almost hear the city waking in layers. A door slams somewhere below, a mule snorts, a woman calls for water, and from the distance comes the sharp rhythm of hammer against metal. It all blends together into the hum of Rome itself. You reach for your small tinderbox, the same one you have used for years. Its surface is blackened from constant use. With two firm strikes, sparks leap and catch on a thin strip of linen. You touch it gently to the oil lamp and watch the flame bloom. Small at first, then strong enough to cast dancing shadows across the walls. The sight still feels sacred. Fire is your companion. It obeys no one fully, but it listens when treated with respect. You learned that lesson long ago, when you were still an apprentice and your sleeve caught alight. The memory of that brief flash of pain never left you. Even now, when the wax pops or hisses unexpectedly, your pulse jumps for a moment. You move the pot of wax closer to the lamp's flame, steadying it over a tripod stand. The metal begins to warm. The wax softens from the edges inward, becoming clear and golden. You stir with a wooden rod, slow circles that hypnotize the eyes. The smell deepens, part sweetness, part animal musk. The neighbors sometimes complain about it, but you know it means work is being done. Your hands are practiced. You pour, stir, cool, trim, repeat. Every movement is small but exact. There is no art in candle making, not really. There is rhythm, there is patience, there is the same motion hundreds of times, until it becomes second nature. Still, in that repetition, there is comfort. Through the half-open window, you hear a burst of laughter. A group of street children chase one another past the shop. They are barefoot, their faces smudged, their joy loud enough to compete with the morning market sounds. For a brief moment, you pause to watch them, thinking how even they depend on your craft. When the evening falls, those same children will run home under the light of your candles. You turn back to the pot. The wax has reached the right clarity. Time to pour. You lift the pot with both hands and let the thick liquid flow into the clay molds. It glides slowly, wrapping each wick in warmth, settling into smooth cylinders. The smell of melting fat fills the air again, thicker now, clinging to your skin. Historians still argue whether ancient Roman candle makers were considered true craftsmen or simply laborers. Some say your work was a trade no different from soap making or pottery. Others believe you stood closer to the religious sphere, the guardians of sacred light. Perhaps both are true. After all, every home, every shrine, every temple, and every ceremony depends on you in some way. A small fringe account from a 3rd century writer once claimed that candle makers whispered to their wax to keep it obedient, muttering quiet Latin phrases while pouring. You never knew if that was myth or metaphor, but you find yourself doing it sometimes anyway. There is something soothing about it. You hum a tune under your breath now, just to fill the silence. The candles begin to cool, their surfaces smoothing out like calm water. You glance around the workshop. Everything feels in its place, molds neatly lined, tools clean, shelves arranged by habit. You can tell the time of day just by the angle of the light cutting through the cracks. Then, from outside, comes the familiar sound of the water seller calling, his deep voice echoing between the walls. Acqua, acqua, fresca, it's your signal. The sun is fully up now, and the market street below your window is awake. You step outside, stretching your arms. The street smells of bread, smoke, and people. To your left, a baker slides loaves from the oven, the crusts cracking as they cool. To your right, a cobbler kneels beside a soldier's boot, muttering about worn soles and bad pay. Everything moves with purpose. The Subura is not the most noble part of Rome, but it is alive. Its residents are poor, but they never stop building, fixing, making. You see a young boy delivering amphorae of oil to a tavern, a woman selling figs from a woven basket, a group of men rolling barrels toward the forum, all of them, in some way, connected by the same sun and smoke that now touch your face. You return to the workshop, bringing with you a bucket of cool water to temper the newly poured molds. You pour it slowly over the clay, listening to the faint hiss as the heat meets the cool air. Steam curls upward in lazy ribbons. You smile at the sound. It reminds you of early mornings long ago, when your father worked beside you, humming quietly in the same rhythm you do now. He used to say, "The first candle of the day carries your fortune. If it burns evenly, the day will go smoothly. If it sputters, trouble is coming." You've kept that tradition alive, half for superstition and half for memory. You light one of the freshly cooled candles, placing it near the window. The flame wavers but steadies itself. You nod, the day will be fine. The city grows louder outside. Donkeys bray, traders shout, pots clang. You close the shutters halfway to soften the noise. The light inside shifts from gold to amber, warm and thick. It paints the workshop like honey. You pick up a thin knife and begin trimming the bases of the cooled candles, shaping them so they stand upright and clean. Each one looks identical, yet you know the subtle differences, the slight lean of one wick, the air bubble in another. For a moment, you pause and watch the flame of the test candle. It bends toward the window, following the breeze. The smoke curls in elegant spirals. You wonder, briefly, if this small light might someday burn in a temple far from here, or in the chamber of a senator, or maybe beside a soldier's bed in a distant outpost. Every candle leaves home, and none ever return. You hear footsteps outside, someone running. A boy's voice calls your name, sharp and hurried. You wipe your hands and step to the doorway. It's one of the street messengers, his tunic dusty, his hair wild, priests from the temple of Juno. He says, breathlessly, "They're asking for you again. Big order this time." You nod, already expecting it. The full moon approaches, and every temple in the city will want light for their ceremonies. The order will be large, maybe 50 or more. Enough to keep you busy all day and well into the night. You hand the boy a coin, thanking him, and watch him run off. The noise of the street swells again, the rhythm of Rome continuing without pause. You turn back inside, to the waiting moulds and the faint hum of the fire. Lighting the first flame of the day is never just about beginning work. It is about joining the city itself, one light among thousands, each flickering, each alive, each feeding the endless breath of Rome. The streets of the Subura are awake now. Not quietly, not slowly, but with the chaotic rhythm of a city that never really slept in the first place. You push open the heavy wooden door of your workshop, step out with your basket of finished candles, and the world greets you with a sudden rush of smells and sounds. The air carries roasted grain from the bakeries, the sharp tang of vinegar from a nearby tavern, and the wet, sour scent of yesterday's rain trapped between stones. The cobblestones glisten faintly under the rising sun, slick and uneven, the color of ash. Water trickles from a cracked aqueduct spout down the alley, forming thin silver streams that weave around your sandals as you walk. To your left, a woman balances a tray of figs on her head. To your right, a barber sharpens his blade, calling for customers who pass too quickly to answer. Someone argues about the price of wine in the distance. The voices layer over each other until they become one long hum. Rome is noisy, even when you try not to listen. You keep walking, head bowed, careful not to spill your load. The candles are still tender, the wax soft from the morning warmth. A small boy darts past, nearly knocking into you, but you sidestep him without breaking pace. You have lived here too long to be startled by movement. The Subura is the heart of the working class, dense, rough, and alive. Its narrow lanes are home to butchers, cobblers, bakers, metalworkers, and you, the candle maker. Most live above their shops, stacked one over the other like layers of bread, the walls darkened by years of smoke and rain. From some balconies hang laundry, from others dried herbs or empty cages. The smell of humanity is everywhere. Historians still argue whether the Subura was truly as wild and dangerous as ancient writers claimed. Some described it as a maze of sin and poverty, others as the beating engine of Roman industry. Both are true in their own way. You have seen drunken fights break out in the middle of the street, and have also seen neighbors share their last loaf of bread. Rome holds both truths in its hands at once. You pass a tavern that has just opened its shutters. A heavy man inside waves at you, Gaius, the wine merchant. His beard is thick, his laugh louder than his own customers. Candlemaker, he calls, you still burning fat for the gods. You raise the basket slightly in greeting. And for the drinkers too, you reply, your tone calm but edged with humor. He laughs, slapping the counter. Good, we will need light for our sins tonight. You smile, shake your head, and keep walking. The banter is part of the daily symphony. Everyone here has their part to play. You stop at the corner stall, where the olive oil trader, Marcellus, sells small jars lined neatly on a wooden table. He is trimming a wick on a bronze lamp, squinting at the flame. Wax again, he asks when he sees you. Yes, you answer. Pure tallow and beeswax mix. The priests will want the cleaner burn. He nods, thoughtfully, examining one of your candles. You know, he says, they say the temple of Juno pays more to those who scent their wax with rosemary. Maybe you should try. You chuckle softly. Maybe they should pay me first for what they owe. Marcellus grins and slips the candle back into your basket. Ah, fair point. He offers you a small loaf of bread in trade for 2 candles. You agree without hesitation. Barter keeps this part of Rome running as much as coin does. You tuck the bread into your satchel and move along. As you walk deeper into the Subura, the alleys grow narrower, the walls taller, the sky a thin blue thread between rooftops. Children sit in doorways, carving sticks into place swords. An old man feeds pigeons from a chipped bowl. A pair of guards march past, their armor dull and scratched, one yawning openly. You wonder if they even notice the world around them anymore. At the edge of the market district, you pause. A small square opens up, filled with vendors shouting over one another. The noise is deafening, but somehow musical. You find yourself smiling at the chaos. This is Rome, alive in its mess. You set your basket down near a stall that sells clay molds and wax scraps. A familiar face looks up your apprentice, young Publius. His tunic is stained with wax and soot, his hair sticking up like burnt straw. "Master," he calls, "I sold 6 already. The baker took 2, the butcher 4. You nod approvingly. "Good, keep the coins safe this time." He looks offended. "I always do." You raise an eyebrow. "Last week you bought dates with half the day's profit." He grins sheepishly. "They were very sweet, master." You sigh but laugh under your breath. He reminds you of yourself at that age, impatient, eager, convinced that work would always wait. Still, he is learning. His hands no longer tremble when pouring wax, and he no longer forgets to soak the reeds. That is progress enough. While Publius tends the stall, you take a moment to observe the crowd. Soldiers mingle with merchants, slaves with nobles, all brushing shoulders without acknowledgement. A senator's servant stops to buy bread from the same vendor as a beggar. For a brief moment, everyone is equal here, under the same sun, chasing the same necessities. You think about how many candles among this crowd might come from your hands. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, burned and gone, their smoke rising into prayers, laughter, or grief. It is a strange kind of immortality, to be unseen yet essential. A quirky fact drifts into your mind, one your father once mentioned. In some corners of the empire, people used candle soot to make ink. The thought amuses you. Somewhere, far away, someone might be writing a letter by the light of your candle and using its ashes to sign their name. You pick up a fig from a vendor's tray, bite into it, and let the sweetness cut through the waxy taste that lingers in your mouth. The world feels warmer now, fuller. A sudden commotion catches your attention. 2 men argue near a cart loaded with amphorae. One claims the jars are cracked. The other swears they were fine when delivered. Voices rise, gestures grow wild. The crowd begins to form a loose ring around them. You watch quietly, curious but not alarmed. Rome loves arguments more than festivals. Eventually, a passing guard intervenes, waving his baton and muttering about fines. The crowd disperses. Life resumes. You collect the few remaining candles, counting the coins Publius managed to earn. Not bad for the morning. The priest's messenger should arrive soon, and you will need every bit of wax you can gather. Before heading back, you stop at a small shrine tucked between 2 buildings. It's dedicated to Vesta, the goddess of the hearth. A small flame burns inside, steady and calm despite the chaos around it. You place a thin candle at its base, bowing your head slightly. It's not exactly prayer, but more like respect for the light that gives your work meaning. The flame flickers once, then steadies again. You watch it for a few quiet seconds. Rome moves around you, loud, alive, uncaring, but in this small pocket of stillness, you find something gentle, something close to peace. You pick up your basket and start the slow walk back to the workshop. The day stretching ahead like an endless, golden road of wax and fire. The smell of melted wax greets you the moment you push open the workshop door again. It is thicker now, heavier, soaked into the walls and your skin alike. You set the basket of coins on the table and breathe in slowly. The space feels alive. The low hum of the fire mingling with the faint ticking of cooling molds. The morning's first work waits to be continued. You remove your cloak, hang it by the door, and roll up your sleeves. The fire in the oil lamp has dimmed, its wick half buried in soot. You trim it with a practiced motion, light it again, and watch the flame bloom, golden and calm. Around you, the shadows retreat, unveiling every tool, every lump of wax, every half-formed candle resting in its mold. You move to the workbench and pull out a block of raw beeswax. It gleams softly under the light, smoother and more fragrant than tallow. You slice a piece off with a small iron knife, the blade gliding through like butter. The scent that escapes is clean and faintly sweet. You drop the chunk into the melting pot, where it joins the cloudy white fat from the morning batch. Slowly they merge, one heavier, one lighter, until the surface shines like liquid gold. The balance of wax and tallow is the secret of the trade. Too much tallow and the candle smokes. Too much beeswax and it becomes too expensive for most customers. You learned this balance through trial and error, through the burns on your hands and the complaints of priests whose altars grew black with soot. Historians still argue whether Roman candle makers used precise measurements or intuition. You smile at that thought. No craftsman here owns a scale fine enough for such detail. You measure by eye, by scent, by the feel of the wax between your fingers. That is the real art, not perfection, but memory. You stir the mixture gently. The smell deepens, filling the room with warmth. You glance toward the window where the sunlight now burns brighter, streaking through the dust that dances like golden snow. For a brief moment, the light feels almost alive, as if testing your creation. You lay out the papyrus reeds that will serve as wicks. Each one must be straight, dry, and evenly cut. You run your fingers along them, discarding the frayed ends. Once chosen, they go into a small bowl of melted wax, soaking up just enough to harden slightly. You lift one and hold it against the light. Perfect, no curls, no cracks. As you prepare the molds, your apprentice Publius stumbles in, breathless from the run back from the market. "Master," he says, "the temple messenger came again. He said the ceremony for Juno Lucina will be held tomorrow. They need 50 candles, tall ones, the kind that burn through the night." You nod slowly. 50, you repeat, as if tasting the number. It is not small, but neither impossible. Did he pay the deposit? Publius hesitates, scratching the back of his neck. He said the temple's accountant will handle it later. You sigh. Later, you echo the word heavy. You have heard it too many times. The gods are never short of praise, but always short of coin. Still, you return to your work. There is no time for frustration. You pour the molten wax carefully into the tall clay cylinders. The room fills with soft ripples of sound, the slow, steady pour, the faint creak of cooling clay, the distant chatter from the street outside. A drop of wax splashes onto your arm, hot enough to sting. You wince, blow on it, then chuckle softly to yourself. It is part of the rhythm now. Pain, precision, patience. the 3 candles of your trade. Your apprentice begins trimming cooled candles beside you, his movements clumsy but improving. Master, he asks after a while, do you think the gods actually see these candles when people pray? You keep your eyes on the wax as you answer. Maybe they do. Or maybe people only light them to see themselves more clearly. He frowns at that, not understanding. You smile. It means the flame reminds people of life. It moves, it breathes, it eats air. When you stare at it long enough, it looks back. He seems satisfied with that answer, or at least quieted by it. A quirky old belief crosses your mind, one your grandmother told you when you were small. She said every flame has a spirit living inside it, and if you blow on it too harshly, the spirit might escape and haunt your house. That is why you always pinch a candle's flame to snuff it out instead of blowing. You still do it that way, though you no longer believe in spirits. Some habits survive disbelief. The door creaks as someone enters. It is Marcellus, the olive oil trader from the street. He steps inside, wiping sweat from his brow. Smells like honey and sin in here, he jokes. You grin. Then my work is balanced. He holds out a small pouch. Here's the oil you asked for, clean press. Should burn well in lamps. You trade him 3 finished candles. He studies them with admiration. You know, he says, they say in Alexandria they use scented wax, cinnamon, sometimes myrrh. Imagine the smell of that. You nod. I have imagined it. I have also imagined the price. He laughs, deep and good-natured. Fair enough. Still, if Rome ever gets tired of plain wax, you'll be ready. When he leaves, the workshop feels quieter again. Only the bubbling wax speaks. The air has grown thick with heat. You can feel sweat trickle down your back as you lean over the molds. The sun outside climbs higher, pressing its weight through the roof. You pause to drink water from a clay cup, the coolness grounding you. The pot's surface gleams now, the wax ready for the next pour. You lift it once more, letting the thick liquid fall in steady ribbons into the waiting molds. Each one fills like a vessel of light not yet born. You glance toward the small statue of Vulcan on the shelf. His bronze eyes reflect the firelight. You murmur quietly, keep the flames steady. Not prayer, not plea, just routine. When the final mold is filled, you sit down on the small stool by the wall. Your legs ache, your fingers coated in a thin film of wax that refuses to wash off. You can feel the day stretching long ahead of you. Deliveries, more orders, repairs to the molds. But for a moment, you simply sit. The sound of Rome filters in through the open window. The soft murmur of voices, the crackle of a distant forge, a cartwheel squeaking as it turns. You close your eyes briefly, listening. Every noise belongs to someone's craft, someone's life. You think about how all these people, every worker and seller and soldier, depend on light, on something that burns and fades, something you make with your hands. There is humility in that thought, and a quiet pride too. The wax in the molds cools slowly. You watch the surface solidify, a faint mist rising as it contracts. The smell is soothing, almost sweet now. Publius yawns loudly, and you laugh softly. Go fetch bread, you tell him, and hurry back. We have a long day ahead. As he runs off, the workshop settles again into stillness. The flame wavers once, then steadies, its light resting over the rows of fresh candles like a promise. You pick up one of the cooled pieces, still warm to the touch, and hold it up. It shines faintly in the afternoon sun, the mark of your thumb pressed gently into its base. You smile, not out of vanity, but because it is proof that something simple can still hold beauty. The sound of sandals on stone comes before the knock. You glance up from your bench, half expecting it. The day has gone too smoothly for too long. The wooden door rattles twice, then opens just enough to let in a streak of sunlight and the faint jangle of metal. A young man steps inside, dressed in the white-trimmed tunic of a temple servant. His expression is polite but urgent, the kind of face that has been told to hurry without being told why. "Are you the candle maker?" he asks, though the question is unnecessary. The air itself answers for you, wax, smoke, and warm tallow thick enough to taste. You nod once, "For the temple of Juno, I presume." He bows slightly. "Yes, master craftsman. The high priestess requests your finest work. The festival begins at sunset tomorrow. The goddess must not wait in darkness." You hide a small smile. The temple never admits to planning late, only to being divinely inspired at the last possible moment. "How many candles?" you ask. 50 large, 20 small, all by sunrise if possible. Publius, sitting near the corner, trimming cooled wicks, groans softly under his breath. You pretend not to hear him. "That is a long night's work." You say mildly, but not impossible. "Do they require special oiling or scent?" The messenger shakes his head. "Plain wax, as before." The priestess said the flame must be pure, untouched by vanity. You nod, masking relief. "Scented candles take longer. The oils must be balanced carefully, or they smoke." "We will deliver before dawn, you promise." The messenger bows again, drops a small bronze coin on your work table, and turns to leave. You watch him go, then pick up the coin. It gleams weakly in the light, hardly enough for the materials, let alone the labor. You flip it between your fingers. "Payment for the goddess," you mutter, "but none for her servants." Publius laughs quietly. "Do you think Juno tips well, master?" You grin, despite yourself. "Only with lightning." The rest of the day passes in that rhythm of work and quiet talk. You melt more wax, pour fresh molds, and set the tall clay cylinders in neat rows along the wall. Each one is meant to burn for hours, a thick spine of light to guard the temple through the night. The smell grows stronger as the afternoon heat settles in. At one point, you step outside to cool off. The sun is brutal, the stones underfoot hot enough to sting. Across the street, a group of children chase a ball of rags, their laughter echoing between the walls. Somewhere nearby, a street musician plucks at a lyre, the soft notes drifting through the air like dust motes. For a moment, the world feels almost still. Rome in midday is noisy, crowded, alive, yet the sound of work is strangely soothing. It means life continues. You return inside, where the air is heavy but familiar. Publius stands at the table, examining one of the new molds. "Master," he says, "why do the temples need so much light? Can they not pray by day?" You shrug, wiping your hands on your apron. "The gods listen better in the dark." Or so the priests say. Perhaps they only fear their own shadows. He tilts his head, confused but intrigued. "Do you believe in them?" You pause, looking at the flicker of the lamp on the table. "I believe in fire," you say finally. "It consumes and gives." That is enough belief for one man. There is a long silence, filled only by the bubbling of the melting pot. Historians still argue whether Romans saw candles as sacred or merely practical. Some claim they were symbols of divine favor, others say they were no more holy than a loaf of bread. But in moments like this, when the flame bends and straightens as if breathing, you cannot help but feel that something in it remembers. You test a batch of wax by dipping a reed and letting it dry. The color is right, pale, even, smooth. The smell is clean. You nod to yourself and pour another set. The repetition is hypnotic. Melt, pour, cool, trim. Melt, pour, cool, cool, trim. As the afternoon fades, a second visitor arrives. A priestess, this time, older, robed in white and gold. Her face is calm, though her eyes carry the edge of authority, sharpened by years of being obeyed. She steps into the workshop and surveys the shelves. These are for the goddess. She asks. Yes, you answer, bowing your head slightly. They must burn without smoke, she says, inspecting a cooled candle. The ceremony honors fertility. If the flame wavers or spits, it brings ill omen. You incline your head. I understand. The wax is pure. The wicks are clean. She studies your hands, rough, scarred, streaked faintly with wax. You've made offerings before. Many times, you reply softly. I've watched the temples burn brighter than the stars. For a moment, she smiles, faintly, then places a small amulet on the work table, a bronze charm in the shape of a crescent moon. Keep this, she says. It is for protection. Juno favors those who serve the light. You thank her, surprised by the gesture. When she leaves, the workshop feels changed, quieter, almost reverent. Publius picks up the amulet, white-dyed. Do you think it works? He asks. You chuckle. If it keeps the wax from burning my fingers, I'll believe in miracles. The sun begins to fall behind the rooftops. Shadows stretch across the floor like dark ribbons. You light a few of the finished candles and place them around the room, testing their glow. The flames dance softly, their light golden and alive. The workshop looks transformed, no longer a place of labor, but a small chapel of warmth. You sit for a moment, watching the light flicker. The world outside grows dim. A cart passes, its wheels rattling on the stones. The sound fades, replaced by the crackle of the small fire and the steady breath of wax cooling. Publius sweeps the floor, humming quietly. The rhythm of his broom matches the slow beat of your heart. There is a story you once heard, whispered by another craftsman long ago, that Juno's temple once burned down after a festival, the priests blaming impure wax for offending the goddess. You do not know if it is true, but the idea lingers. The thought that light, meant to honor, can also destroy. You touch the bronze amulet again. It is warm from your palm. Let us hope, you murmur. The goddess is pleased this time. As night deepens, the candles around you glow brighter, their flames steady and sure. The room smells of honey, smoke, and faint iron from the molds. It is a smell that means work well done. You pour the final batch of the evening, the wax flowing smooth and slow. Publius yawns, his head bobbing with exhaustion. Go home, you tell him gently. Sleep, I'll finish the rest. He hesitates, then nods. Good night, master. When the door closes behind him, you are alone again with the fire. The workshop hums softly. The flames bend and straighten, casting your shadow across the wall, tall, distorted, alive. You sit in silence, listening to the faint sound of the city outside, a dog barking, a wheel squeaking, a lullaby drifting from a nearby window. Tomorrow 50 candles will stand in the temple of Juno, their flames trembling in the divine breath of prayer, and no one there will think of you. But you do not mind. You never work for recognition. You work for the flame itself. By the time the sun stands high above the rooftops, the workshop has grown unbearably warm. The wax softens on its own, even without the fire. A faint haze hangs in the air, heavy with the scent of tallow and beeswax, thick enough to coat your tongue. You wipe your forehead with the back of your arm and glance toward the window. It is midday now, the hour when the Subura slows just long enough to breathe. You step outside, squinting as the sunlight strikes your eyes. The street is bright and crowded. Vendors still shout, but their energy has dulled under the heat. The cries of fresh bread, cool water, and figs, 2 for a coin, sound more like weary habits than enthusiasm. A donkey brays somewhere nearby, breaking the drowsy rhythm. You close the workshop door behind you and make your way down the narrow street toward the square where the craftsmen gather at midday. The stones under your sandals are hot, almost sticky, the smell of baking dust filling your nose. A group of children run past you carrying a wooden hoop, laughing until one of them trips and falls. Their laughter turns into loud complaint, but even that feels lazy in the noon heat. At the far end of the street, you find the shade of a stone archway where other craftsmen sit together, the potters, the lamp makers, the cobblers, and the man who carves little wooden charms shaped like animals. They greet you with tired smiles. Candlemaker calls Rufus the potter, lifting a small loaf of bread in salute. Come, sit. The gods won't miss a few moments of your sweat. You grin and sit beside him on the low wall, setting down your water flask. The air smells of clay, dust, olives, and faint wine. Someone passes around a small clay bowl of cheese and bread. You take a piece, chew slowly, letting the salty tanks settle on your tongue. Rufus sighs. I heard the temple has you making candles again. You must have angered someone important. You laugh softly. The goddess herself, perhaps. She loves her light bright and her deadlines short. The group chuckles. Cassius, the lamp maker, nods knowingly. At least your flames behave. Oil lamps spit and smoke like drunkards when the mixture's wrong. My workshop smells like Tartarus most days. Mine too, says another, wiping his hands on his tunic. Except my lamps are your competition. If your candles ever stop burning, I'll be rich. You lift your cup of watered wine in mock salute. Then may my candles always last forever, and your lamps forever sputter. The group laughs louder this time, their voices echoing off the surrounding walls. Even in the grind of labor, laughter is a currency of survival. Someone starts telling a story about a senator's wife who bought 30 lamps and then returned half, claiming the light made her husband look older. Another man swears he once sold a cracked amphora to a guard who used it as a helmet. The conversation drifts easily from trade to gossip to absurd rumor, blending together into the kind of talk that keeps hands and hearts moving through long, repetitive days. You sit back, finishing the last of your bread, and look around at the men. Each bears the marks of his craft, calloused fingers, burn scars, clay dust, or ink stains. Rome might be built by emperors, but it is held together by hands like these. Historians still argue whether craftsmen of your time held real respect or were seen as mere laborers. The philosophers liked to talk of virtue, but they still needed shoes, bowls, and candles. Respect in the Subura comes not from title but from usefulness. You all understand that. Rufus leans back, resting his elbows on his knees. You ever think of leaving the city? He asks suddenly. There's work in Ostia, they say. Fewer taxes, cleaner air. You shake your head. I tried once. The sea air made the wax too soft. Besides, the noise here keeps me awake. Silence makes me nervous. He chuckles. You are truly Roman, then? A young boy approaches with a basket of olives, offering small handfuls for a few coins. You buy some, passing them around. The fruit is bitter but fresh, the oil glistening under the sunlight. You pop one into your mouth, savoring the sharp taste. Then, from a nearby tavern, music begins, a flute and a drum, soft but rhythmic. A few men hum along, others tap their feet. The city might sweat and grind, but it never fully rests. Even lunch is just another kind of movement. You glance down the street and catch sight of your apprentice Publius weaving through the crowd. A loaf of bread under his arm and a sheepish grin on his face. Master, he calls. I thought you'd be back already. You wave him over. Sit, eat. He plops down beside you, tearing the loaf in half. The wax is cooling fine, he says between bites. No bubbles this time. Good, you reply. You're learning to be patient. That's half the craft. He smirks. And the other half? You smile faintly. Learning not to curse the gods when your mold cracks. He laughs, nearly choking on his bread. The others join in. The laughter carries easily through the midday air, light and A fringe belief comes to mind. One you once heard from a Syrian merchant who bought candles from you years ago. He said some people in the East believed that laughter during work keeps evil spirits away from the tools. You never found proof of that, but it feels true enough. Workshops filled with silence often go cold. The conversation drifts toward taxes and the new city edict about fire safety. Cassius groans. They want us to keep water buckets by every doorway now, as if that will stop a fire once the gods are angry. You nod. A single spark can eat half the street before the soldiers even notice. Last winter, a baker's oven nearly took my shop with it. Rufus grins. And yet you make fire for a living. You lift your cup again. Better to befriend the enemy. As the sun starts its slow descent, the group begins to scatter. Each man returns to his own workshop, to his own rhythm of creation and endurance. You linger for a moment longer, watching the way the sunlight glows against the dust in the air. Every speck looks like a tiny flame suspended in time. Publius nudges you. We should go, master. The molds will be ready. You nod, standing. The muscles in your back protest slightly, but the movement feels grounding. You start the slow walk back through the busy street. The hum of Rome surrounding you once more, sellers shouting, carts creaking, the faint ringing of a temple bell calling worshippers. By the time you reach your door, the heat has softened, replaced by the long golden light of afternoon. Inside, the air smells again of wax and smoke. The molds stand ready, smooth and solid. You feel a quiet satisfaction settle in your chest. You light a candle and place it on the work table, its flame steady and soft. The day's noise fades behind the closed door. Tomorrow's festival looms large, but for now, this moment of rest, this simple meal shared among craftsmen, feels like a small offering to the same gods you serve with your fire. The afternoon stretches on like warm honey, thick and golden. You have returned to your bench, sleeves rolled up, face still flushed from the heat. The workshop feels smaller than usual, crowded not by people but by tasks, waiting in neat rows. Candles line the shelves in disciplined silence, each one a soldier ready for duty. The door creaks open again, letting in a thin ribbon of sunlight, and with it, a familiar voice. "Candlemaker, it is Lucius Varro, the merchant from the southern docks. You know him by the scrape of his sandals and the smell of sea salt that always clings to his cloak." He steps inside, brushing dust from his sleeves with the lazy confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "Ah," he says, glancing around, "the temple's favorite flamekeeper at work. Still using the same little molds, I see." You hide your smirk. They do what they must. Lucius, wax doesn't care about fashion. He laughs, the sound rolling deep like a drum. You always were a humble one. Tell me, do you ever dream of larger work? I could make you famous in Alexandria. They love Roman craftsmanship down there. You wipe your hands on your apron and lean against the table. And what would I make there? Scented luxuries for nobles who burn them only once. I make light for people who need it, not for those who want to boast about it. Lucius grins, undeterred, still the philosopher. I remember when your father said the same. He never left this city either. The mention of your father makes you pause, but only for a heartbeat. He had work that mattered, you say simply. Lucius looks around, picking up one of the freshly molded candles. These could fetch twice the price in Antioch, he says, inspecting the base. The trade ships are leaving in 2 days. I could buy 100, maybe more. You raise an eyebrow. And pay in how many months? He grins again, caught a fair price. Soon as the next cargo returns. You chuckle softly. Your promises travel slower than your ships. Lucius, I'll think about it if there's any wax left after the goddess takes her share. He places the candle down, sighs dramatically, and spreads his hands. One day, you'll thank me for making you rich. One day, you echo, but not today. The merchant laughs again, clapping you on the shoulder. Ah, you'll die here, surrounded by wax and stubbornness. You smile. Then at least I'll be well lit. As he leaves, you notice he moves slower than usual. Age, perhaps, or the weight of too many promises. You watch him go until the door closes, and the workshop returns to its warm, quiet. Publius looks up from his corner, where he's polishing candle bases. Why don't you take his offer, master? You could live near the sea. You'd have more money. You shake your head. I already have enough light. What would I buy with more? He frowns. Food, wine. You chuckle. I'd only burn it all in the end. The wax in the pot has melted again, the surface shining like liquid amber. You pick up the wooden stirrer and move it gently in circles, slow and steady. The sound it makes, the quiet slosh of molten wax, blends with the faint noises outside. Footsteps, market chatter, the distant creak of a cart. Historians still argue whether merchants like Lucius were the lifeblood of Rome or its leeches. Without them, goods wouldn't move. But they also drove up prices, hoarded wealth, and turned the crafts of simple men into tokens of greed. You have always kept your distance from that world. The trade of light should never be driven by darkness. You pour another batch of wax into the molds. Each pour is like a prayer, deliberate, rhythmic, and calm. The wax slides down in golden ribbons, wrapping the reeds in warmth. You can feel the weight of the work in your wrists. From the corner, Publius speaks again, more softly this time. Master, when I'm older, could I open my own workshop? You nod without hesitation. Of course, every flame should start its own fire. He smiles at that, shyly, then focuses on trimming the cooled pieces. Outside, the sounds of the market begin to fade. The day tilts toward evening. Through the narrow window, the sunlight grows redder, softer. The air cools just enough for you to breathe deeply again. You take a sip of water from the clay jug, feeling the grit of dust against your teeth. You remember a rumor that once made its way to you, a strange one. It claimed that candle makers in the far north used animal marrow instead of wax, calling their creations bones of light. You never knew if that was true, but the phrase stuck with you. There is poetry in it, in the idea that light can come even from what was once alive. The door creaks again, not Lucius this time, but a woman in a veil, holding a small basket. She steps inside quietly, her face half hidden. You recognize her voice before you see her eyes. Are you the one who made the candles for the temple? You nod. Yes, my lady. Have they burned well? She lifts the veil just enough to reveal kind features. Though tired, they burned evenly, beautifully. The priestess was pleased. You bow your head slightly. Then the goddess must be pleased as well. She sets the basket on your table. Inside are small loaves of honey bread and a folded piece of parchment. A token, she says, from the temple, and a message. You open the parchment and read. It is a short note written in careful script. Juno's flame has burned pure. Your craft honors the gods. You fold the note, feeling a quiet warmth that has nothing to do with fire. Tell the priestess my thanks, you say. The woman nods, then leaves, the faint scent of myrrh following her out into the street. You sit down, the bread still warm in your hands. Publius watches you. They thanked you, he says. That's rare. You nod. The gods have long memories, but the priests do not. It's good to be remembered once in a while. You break the bread, handing half to him. The sweetness melts on your tongue, soft and comforting. For a brief moment, the whole world feels balanced. The wax cooling, the flames steady, the air still. You glance toward the shelves, rows of candles gleaming faintly in the fading light. Each one looks identical, but you know better. Every candle carries its own imperfections, its own breath trapped inside the wax. Like people, none burn exactly the same way. The sun dips lower. Outside, the city begins its shift toward night. Vendors pack away their goods, calling out last prices. The clatter of amphorae mixes with the laughter of drunk laborers. You rise and light one of the new candles, placing it by the window. The flame flickers, reflecting off the glass, a small beacon against the coming dark. You whisper softly, almost to yourself, for Juno, for Rome, for light itself. The wax drips slowly down the side, pooling in quiet folds. The smell of honey and smoke fills the room, and as the last rays of sunlight fade from the workshop wall, you realize it is not wealth that matters, nor fame. It is this, the moment when darkness waits patiently outside, and you hold it back, one flame at a time. The evening light filters through the shutters in thin, trembling stripes. The air feels heavier now, the warmth of the day still trapped inside the walls. You set another row of candles on the shelf to cool, the surface of each one shining faintly in the dimness. Publius has gone home for the night, leaving only the quiet hum of the fire and the steady drip of wax from the ladle to keep you company. You pause for a moment, leaning back against the table, listening. Rome never truly sleeps, not even after sunset. The distant rumble of carts still echoes from the streets below, mingled with laughter, the strum of a lyre. the occasional bark of a dog. But inside this workshop, there is stillness. The kind of stillness that makes small sounds feel loud. The whisper of a candle's flame. The pop of cooling wax. The sigh of your own breath. You light a fresh candle, testing its burn. The wick catches, bending slightly before it straightens. The flame dances once, twice, then steadies into a golden teardrop. You watch it closely, as you always do. The smallest shift in the air can change everything. Too much smoke means impure wax. A fast burn means too little tallow. But sometimes, even when everything seems perfect, a candle will flicker strangely, its flame twisting and shaking as if reacting to something unseen. You remember what your grandmother used to say. When a candle trembles, though the air is still, it means a spirit is watching. You never believed it, not really. Yet every time the flame shivers without reason, a small part of you feels the old chill again. Tonight, the candle sputters once, spitting a tiny bead of wax onto the table. You tilt your head, studying it. The wick looks fine. The air is calm. Still, the flame dances unevenly. You frown softly, adjusting the wick with a pin. The flame hesitates, then steadies. Behave, you murmur quietly, half to the candle, half to yourself. You have seen stranger things in your time as a maker of light. There was the time a candle burned with a blue flame for hours, a strange chemical trick. Perhaps, though it made the priests whisper of omens. Another time, a whole batch of wax refused to harden, no matter how long it cooled. A friend told you the gods sometimes reject certain offerings, that wax mixed on an unlucky day cannot hold flame. You do not believe in luck, but you still remember the smell of that spoiled batch, sour, bitter, stubbornly wrong. You glance toward the small bronze figure of Vulcan on your shelf. His expression, forever calm and fierce, catches the flicker of the light. Keep your forge gentle tonight, you mutter. The goddess needs quiet flames. Outside, the streets have softened into evening noise. You hear footsteps, low voices, the faint clink of coins. The tavern 2 doors down has started serving again. Laughter spills into the alley, warm and familiar, but beneath it, another sound begins to grow. The low, hollow chant of priests from the temple of Juno, somewhere uphill. They must be preparing for the festival. The rhythm of their voices drifts through the air, carried on the faint scent of incense. You find yourself murmuring along with the familiar pattern. Not the words, those belong to the priests, but the rhythm. It matches the beat of your own work, the rise and fall of your breath as you pour and shape. A sudden draft sneaks through the window, brushing past your arm. The candle flame flutters again, leaning toward the bronze statue before straightening. You close the shutter a little tighter. The sound of the city fades by half, replaced by the soft pulse of the flame. Historians still argue whether Romans truly feared omens, or simply pretended to for the sake of tradition. You think it was both. Fear and faith are close cousins. Even you, who trust only in craft, cannot fully ignore the pull of old beliefs when the light behaves strangely. You sit down on the stool, staring at the flickering flame. The shadows move across the wall like water, bending and curling in slow, silent waves. You can almost see faces in them, tricks of the eyes, born of exhaustion and imagination. Still, it feels like company. You remember an old superstition among candle makers, one rarely spoken aloud. It said that every candle carries a breath from the maker's soul. When the candle burns, that breath escapes, drifting unseen through the world. If that is true, then pieces of you already live in hundreds of places across Rome, in temples, in homes, in dark corridors where someone prays, or writes, or mourns. The thought should feel unsettling. Instead, it comforts you. You stand and stretch, your back creaking like old wood. The workshop feels smaller now, pressed in by night. You open the door slightly to let in some fresh air. The sky outside is deep blue, the kind of color that comes just before true darkness. Torches flicker on the walls of nearby houses. The scent of grilled fish drifts from a nearby stall. A group of men pass by, laughing loudly, carrying clay amphorae of wine. One waves at you, recognizing your face from the market. "Candlemaker," he shouts. "A light for our table, eh?" You smile and toss him a small stub of wax. He catches it clumsily, laughs, and disappears down the street. You watch them go, then glance down the alley. At the far end, near the shrine of Vesta, a small crowd gathers. You see the glow of candles, your candles flickering in the hands of women wrapped in shawls. They bow their heads as a priest walks past with a silver bowl. The sight makes your chest warm. You had worked all day for this moment, light leaving your hands to find new purpose. You step outside quietly, standing just beyond the reach of their glow. The soft murmur of prayers rises like mist, the flames trembling gently in the night air. Some bend, some flare, some burn perfectly still. You notice one candle's light suddenly shrink, then recover. A faint smile touches your lips. "Easy," you whisper, as if the flame can hear you. One of the women turns slightly, her eyes catching yours. She doesn't speak, only nods once in silent thanks. You return the gesture, then slip back into your workshop. Inside, the air feels even warmer after the cool of the street. You close the door and look around the shelves, the molds, the tools, all exactly as they should be. You sit at the table again, staring at the last candle you lit, its flame still steady and strong. There's a strange calm in that little light. It doesn't demand attention. It simply exists, giving without thought, burning without fear of ending. You rest your hands on the table and watch the wax drip slowly down the side, forming quiet, perfect patterns as it cools. You whisper softly, almost without meaning to, "Stay steady till morning." Then, as the final sounds of the street fade into the deep hum of night, you let your eyes rest on the flame until everything else, the city, the walls, even time itself, seems to melt away. The sun returns with heat that feels almost personal, crawling across the clay roof and down the walls until the air itself begins to shimmer. By mid-morning, the workshop has become an oven. The small fire that you usually rely on for melting wax now seems unnecessary, almost mocking in its steady burn. You lift the lid from the bronze pot and find the wax already half softened by the warmth alone. Sweat trickles down your back as you pull the shutters open wider. The light that spills in is white and sharp, cutting across the table and making the pools of wax gleam like gold. You squint and move the molds closer to the wall where there is still a sliver of shade. Rome's summers are long and heavy, and this one has been especially cruel. You take a sip of tepid water from a clay jug, the taste flat but comforting. The air smells of dust, salt, and faint smoke from the baker's oven down the street. Somewhere beyond the window, a woman shouts at her son, and a group of mules pass, their hooves thudding against the stones in a steady rhythm. The heat changes the work in ways you have learned to respect. The wax cools slower, takes longer to set. sometimes refuses to harden properly. If you rush it, the surface cracks. If you wait too long, it gathers dust. Candle making in the Roman summer is an act of patience. You remember your father warning you about days like this. The sun has its own temper, he used to say. It will melt your work if it feels ignored. You had laughed at the time, but now, watching the edges of your molds shine with liquid wax, you know he was not entirely wrong. You take a thin reed, dip it into the molten mix, and watch how the wax clings. The first layer should harden within seconds, but it doesn't. Instead, it drips, slow and reluctant. You sigh, so it begins. You mutter quietly. You move the pot away from the fire, placing it on a stone ledge where the heat is less direct. Then you start to improvise. A damp cloth over the molds to cool them faster. A bit of water sprinkled along the bench to bring down the air's temperature. Each trick learned through years of trial. Each one small enough to be forgotten by anyone who has never worked beside a living flame. The city outside hums with the restless noise of heat. You can hear vendors' voices raised louder than usual, fighting against the heavy air. A dog barks and gives up halfway. Even the pigeons sound tired, cooing lazily from the roof. Historians still argue whether ordinary Romans feared the heat of summer or simply endured it. There are stories of emperors sleeping in marble chambers, cooled by servants waving fans. But here, in the Subura, there is no escape. The sun is just another overseer, watching, waiting, testing your endurance. You step outside briefly, hoping for air, but the street is no kinder. The stone walls reflect the heat back at you, amplifying it. You see a baker wiping sweat from his brow, fanning his oven with a broad palm leaf. Too hot for bread, he mutters as you pass. Too hot for breathing. A few children splash in a bucket of water near the fountain, laughing between gasps. The water sparkles like molten glass. You watch them for a moment, then return to the workshop, resigned but strangely grateful. The world outside may burn, but inside, at least, you know how to manage fire. You set to work again, slowly and deliberately. The wax behaves a little better now, settling in thick ribbons into the molds. You hum under your breath, a habit when you need the work to stay steady. The rhythm helps, your voice blending softly with the faint bubbling of the pot. As the heat presses on, your mind drifts. You think of the temple candles you sent last night, now burning in rows before the statue of Juno. Perhaps, even now, the wax you poured is melting in soft spirals. The flames reflected in the goddess's bronze eyes. You wonder if the priests notice how the air itself moves differently around the fire, how it bends and sways, how it breathes. A fringe account once claimed that ancient craftsmen could read omens in melted wax, that the shapes left behind after the flame died could predict health, fortune, or death. You tried it once, out of curiosity. The pattern left behind looked like a bird's wing. You never decided what that meant, but you've thought of it often since. By midday, the heat has reached its peak. The wax in the molds begins to soften again even as it cools. You curse softly under your breath and open the shutters wider still, hoping for a breeze. The air that enters is thick and motionless, like stepping into another layer of heat rather than escaping it. You take a damp rag and press it against the back of your neck. It helps a little. The bronze statue of Vulcan gleams faintly in the corner, its metal too hot to touch. You glance at it and grin weakly. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You say. As the hours drag on, you decide to take a chance. You bring a small bucket of cold water and set it near the table. Carefully, you dip your fingers into it, then flick droplets into the air above the molds. The steam rises in thin wisps, curling upward like the ghost of a cloud. The sound, soft, sharp, fleeting, is oddly satisfying. For the first time all day, the wax begins to behave. The surface is smooth, the edges harden. You smile faintly. Victory, even small, feels good. You glance toward the window, where the light has turned from white to gold again. Evening is coming. The city's noise shifts, softens, stretches. Somewhere a woman begins to sing. Not a song, you know, but slow, sweet, almost mournful. It drifts into your workshop and wraps itself around you. You light one of the candles you just finished. Its flame catches quickly, burning with a calm, steady glow. You watch the wax at its base melt into a clear pool. No smoke, no sputter, just perfect balance. You sit down beside it, finally letting yourself breathe deeply. The heat still presses against your skin, but the worst of it has passed. You sip the last of your water and close your eyes for a moment, listening to the hum of the city, the soft hiss of the candle. Historians might never write about the men who spent their lives making small flames. But you think perhaps that's how it should be. Candles are meant to burn quietly, to disappear so others can see. You open your eyes again. The candle's light trembles once, steady and sure. You smile, tired but content. You did well, you whisper. The workshop glows faintly in the golden half-light of evening, and for a moment the whole world seems made of fire, soft, patient, alive. The first cool wind of evening slips through the shutters, carrying with it the faint scent of olives, roasted grain, and dust. The light outside softens from gold to amber as the long shadows of Rome stretch across the alleyways. You rise slowly from your stool, back stiff from the long day's heat. The molds on the table gleam under the candlelight, all 40 of them cooling in disciplined rows. You wipe your hands on your apron and push the door open. The noise of the street rushes in like a tide. Voices overlap, laughter collides with arguments, and the steady rhythm of the crowd fills the air. It is evening in the Subura, the hour when Rome truly comes alive. You carry a small basket of finished candles, stepping carefully over the uneven stones. The air outside feels lighter now, the weight of the day replaced by motion. The market that had been sluggish under the sun now buzzes with renewed energy. Torches flicker to life along the walls, each one catching in quick succession as if the city itself is exhaling flame. You move slowly, taking in the sounds. A street vendor calls out, "Figs, 2 for a coin." Another shouts about honeyed wine, his voice thick with smoke. A musician plucks at a lyre while a boy beats rhythm on a clay pot. The tune is simple, repetitive, hypnotic, the kind of melody that could play forever without beginning or end. You stop at a stall near the square, one that sells bronze trinkets and tiny oil lamps. The owner, a woman named Livia, greets you with a grin. "Ah, my favorite candle maker," she says, leaning on her elbow. "How's your fire today?" "Too hot," you reply, setting the basket down. But the wax finally behaved. She picks up one of the candles, inspecting its base. "Smooth," she says approvingly. You pour steadier than the priest's pray. You laugh softly. "That's because the gods don't argue with me." She smiles and places a small handful of coins in your palm. "Take this," she says, "and bring more tomorrow. The taverns will need light for the festival crowd." You nod, pocketing the coins. You'll have them. As you turn to leave, a pair of soldiers walk past, their bronze armor clinking softly. One of them glances at your basket. You make those? He asks. Yes, he grins. Better trade than ours. At least your enemies melt quietly. You chuckle. Yours, unfortunately, melt louder. He laughs, clapping your shoulder before disappearing into the crowd. The easy camaraderie of Rome always amuses you. In this city, even the weary find something to joke about. You continue through the narrow lanes, heading toward the fountain in the small square. People gather there. Merchants, workers, families, even stray dogs that know when to beg. A group of women wash clothes in the basin, talking in low, rhythmic tones. The splash of water echoes against the stones. You take a seat on the low wall beside an old friend, Quintus the cobbler. His hands are stained with dye, his fingernails black from leather glue. Evening, candleman, he says, not looking up from his work, still turning fat into fortune. Into light, you correct, gently, he snorts. Light doesn't pay taxes. You grin. It helps me see them coming, though he chuckles, setting down his awl. You always have an answer. Tell me, are the temple orders done? Almost. The priestess will have her 50 before sunrise. He nods. Good. Maybe then they'll bless this street for once. Or at least stop tripping over my tools. You both share an easy laugh. Around you, the square grows livelier. Torches line the walls, and the soft murmur of conversation fills the air. The baker's stall nearby has reopened, the smell of warm bread mingling with the faint smoke of roasting fish. A group of young men gather around the storyteller near the fountain. An old man with a long white beard and a voice that carries like a temple bell. You listen absently as he tells a tale of Mercury tricking Apollo, his words laced with humor and exaggeration. The crowd laughs at every twist. Publius appears suddenly, weaving through the listeners, carrying 2 cups of watered wine. Master, he says, handing you one. You looked thirsty. You accept it gratefully. You're learning what truly matters in life. He grins. Bread, wax, and wine. You shake your head. Bread, wax, and timing. He laughs, sitting beside you. Do you think they'll ever tell stories about candle makers? You sip your drink and smile. Only if one of us accidentally burns down a senator's house. He chuckles, though his eyes are thoughtful. Still, he says softly, I think there's something noble about it. Making light from darkness. You look at him for a moment, surprised by the weight in his voice. Then you nod. Yes, there is. Historians still argue whether Rome ever truly slept, or whether it simply changed its rhythm. Looking around, you'd swear the city breathes differently after sunset, slower, deeper, but still alive. The air feels cooler now, the torchlight painting everything in gold and shadow. A small group of women walk past carrying baskets of flowers. One stops to light a candle at the shrine near the fountain, one of yours, by the shape of it. The flame catches easily, steady and bright. She whispers a prayer you cannot hear, then continues on her way. You feel an odd warmth in your chest, something between pride and peace. You drain the last of your wine and stand. Come, you say to Publius, we have to check the molds before they sleep. He groans, good-naturedly. You mean before you sleep? You smile. A craftsman sleeps only when his wax allows it. Together, you walk back through the alley, the night air cool on your skin. The laughter of the square fades behind you, replaced by the softer sounds of the street, footsteps, distant bells. the creak of shutters closing. Back inside, the workshop greets you like an old friend, warm, quiet, still glowing faintly with candlelight. The rows of cooling molds wait patiently on the table. You check them one by one, nodding in satisfaction. Publius yawns. "They're perfect," he murmurs. "Even the gods would approve." "Then we should rest," you say. "Tomorrow will burn early." He leaves soon after, his footsteps fading down the hall. You linger a little longer, lighting one last candle and placing it by the window. Outside, the city hums under its canopy of firelight, every torch and flame a heartbeat in the darkness. You whisper softly, "Good night, Rome." The flame bends gently toward the window, as if bowing in return. The night deepens into stillness, and the narrow alleys of the Subura fall under a quiet veil. The shouts, laughter, and hammering of the day are gone, replaced by softer sounds, the creak of a shutter, the hush of distant footsteps, the faint ring of a temple bell somewhere far above. Inside your workshop, only one candle burns. Its light spills over the wooden table, catching the edges of tools and half-finished molds. You sit beside it, carving away small flakes of hardened wax, shaping them into a new batch of wicks. The air smells faintly sweet, mixed with smoke and dust. Then comes the knock. Soft at first, then louder. The hurried rhythm of someone trying to be polite and desperate at once. You rise slowly, wiping your hands on your apron, and open the door. A man stands there, cloaked and hooded, breathing heavily from running uphill. His face is half-shadowed, but his tone is clear. "Are you the candle maker?" You nod. "Yes, though I'm nearly closed for the night." He steps forward, lowering his hood. You can see the pale outline of temple robes beneath his cloak. "Forgive the hour," he says, "but we need light." At once, you frown slightly. "Another festival." He shakes his head. "A vigil. The noble Gaius Petronius has died. His family wishes the house lit before dawn. They sent me to fetch every candle you can spare." You pause, the words sinking in. Death orders are never easy. The light for morning must burn slow and clean, long enough to last through prayers, strong enough to survive tears. "How many?" you ask quietly. 20, perhaps more. The household is large. They want the flames steady, not too bright. The priest of Mercury will lead the rites himself. You nod, already moving toward the shelves. "Wait here." You gather what you have, a dozen tall candles from the temple batch, and another half-dozen from your reserve. Each one you check by hand, trimming the wicks and smoothing the edges. You work without speaking, and the man watches in silence, his breathing still heavy from the climb. When you finish, you wrap the candles carefully in linen and hand them to him. "These will burn till morning," you say, "but tell them to keep the windows closed. The night wind will feed the flames too much." He nods, taking the bundle. "You'll be paid tomorrow." You wave him off gently. "Light first, payment later. Go." He hesitates, then bows and disappears into the dark street. You stand at the doorway for a moment, watching the faint glow of his lantern fade down the hill. The street feels emptier than usual. Somewhere far away, a dog howls, a long, lonely sound that echoes between the buildings. You close the door and return to your bench. The single candle still burns, its flame perfectly still. You find yourself thinking of Gaius. You've never met him, but you know his type, a man who lived with the quiet confidence of wealth, now silent under marble sheets. And tomorrow, his house will shine with your candles. Historians still argue how Romans viewed death as a journey, a punishment, or simply another duty. But in the Subura, you know death differently. It's not ceremony, it's work. Someone dies, and life continues. The baker still bakes, the cobbler still mends, and the candle maker still shapes light for the dead to borrow. You pick up your carving knife again, but your hands have slowed. The room feels heavier, the silence thicker. You glance at the flame, studying the way it bends slightly toward the open window. You can almost imagine it reaching for the departing messenger. There's a belief among older candle makers, one you've never repeated aloud. They say the first candle lit after a death carries the soul's shadow within its flame. If it burns clean, the journey is peaceful. If it sputters, the spirit lingers. You don't believe it? Not really. But tonight, you watch your candle more closely. The flame flickers once, then steadies again. You exhale slowly. You think of the house where those candles are headed. Servants whispering, curtains drawn, a noble family kneeling in silence as light moves across polished marble. Your work will stand among them, unseen but essential, burning away the fear of the dark. There's something sacred about that, even if no one will ever know your name. A knock sounds again, softer this time. You open the door, expecting the messenger's return, but it's only Marcellus, the olive oil trader. His cloak is damp with mist. Still awake, he asks. Barely, he steps inside, setting down a small jug. I passed a funeral procession on the way here. The torches were poor, smoking like old beasts. I thought of you. You nod. They came here. I gave them better light. He sighs, looking at the shelves. You keep this city glowing, my friend. Without your work, we'd all be blind. You chuckle softly. Blindness can be merciful sometimes. He smiles faintly, pouring a little oil into your lamp. Then let this one burn longer. When he leaves, the workshop feels warmer, gentler. You sit again at the table, the candle still burning steady. The air smells of wax, oil, and faint sea salt from Marcellus's cloak. You pick up one of the unfinished candles and turn it slowly in your hands. For the living or the dead, you whisper, a flame must always serve. A few moments later, you light it beside the first. The two flames lean toward each other, their light merging softly. The room brightens just enough for you to see the fine dust floating through the air, small, golden specks like stars in miniature. You close your eyes and let the warmth settle on your skin. For once, the silence feels right. The noise of Rome fades to nothing, and all that remains is the pulse of light. Somewhere far away, the noble's house will glow with your candles until dawn. By morning, they will be half gone, melted into quiet puddles, their purpose complete. You smile faintly, your eyes still closed. Sleep well, Gaius, you murmur. My light will keep you company. The flames waver gently, almost as if in acknowledgement. The next morning rises slowly, with a light mist hanging over the rooftops. The air smells cleaner than usual, washed by the faint drizzle that fell before dawn. You step outside the workshop and stretch, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders from another long night of work. The sky above Rome is a pale grey, almost silver, and the streets glisten with damp stones. The next morning rises slowly, with a light mist hanging over the rooftops. The air smells cleaner than usual, washed by the faint drizzle that fell before dawn. You step outside the workshop and stretch, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders from another long night of work. The sky above Rome is a pale grey, almost silver, and the streets glisten with damp stones. It is quieter than normal, too. The markets have not yet begun their usual clamour. A few women sweep their doorsteps, and the baker's first loaves are only now beginning to smoke in the ovens. Even the city seems to be moving slower, as if recovering from something. You carry a small basket of trimmed candles and make your way toward the baths. Not the grand ones of the senators, but the modest neighborhood bathhouse used by craftsmen like you. It is an indulgence, perhaps, but one you've earned. Wax clings to your hands and arms like invisible gloves. The only way to truly remove it is with heat and water. As you walk, you pass the fountain square. A few children play by the water's edge, their voices soft in the morning air. A stray dog follows you for a few steps, hopeful for crumbs, then loses interest and trots away. Rome feels younger at this hour, stripped of its noise and pride. The bathhouse sits between two tall buildings, its entrance framed by a carved stone lintel depicting nymphs and dolphins. Steam curls from the doorway, carrying with it the familiar scent of mineral water and soap. You step inside and hand a small coin to the attendant, who barely looks up from his stool. "Frigidarium first," he mutters. "Hot water's slow to heat today." You nod, moving through the dim corridor. The sound of dripping water echoes softly, and the floor beneath your feet is cool, slick with condensation. Inside the bath chamber, the air is thick and humid. A few men already sit in the shallow pool, their voices low, discussing taxes, trade, and the state of the city's aqueducts. The usual complaints, spoken with the same tone as prayer. You set your basket down and slip into the water. It stings at first, then welcomes you fully. The heat seeps into your arms and shoulders, loosening muscles that have been tight for weeks. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling your pulse slow. For a while, no one speaks directly to you. The murmurs of conversation wash over you like the water itself. Then, from your left, a familiar voice says, "I heard the temple of Juno burned bright last night." You turn slightly. It is Cassius, the lamp maker, his hair damp and slicked back. He smiles faintly. They say the candles held till dawn. You nod. They did their duty. He chuckles, as always. The priests never thank the light, only the gods it serves. You shrug. That's how it's always been. He leans back, stretching still. The flame obeys you. That's something. You smile faintly at that, though you say nothing more. Historians still argue whether the Roman baths were places of true rest or just another form of business, where merchants bargained, politicians schemed, and gossip moved faster than water. For you, though it is neither, it is a pause. A rare moment when the city forgets to demand. You sink deeper into the pool, letting the water cover your shoulders. The light filtering through the steam glows soft and golden, bending and flickering like fire seen through wax. You think briefly of your workshop, of the steady glow that fills it when all the candles burn at once. The bathhouse light feels different, wetter, slower, like flame dreaming underwater. A young man nearby complains about the taxes on olive oil, which makes the older men laugh. Someone else tells a story about a merchant caught smuggling perfume from Egypt. The voices drift, blending with the rhythmic splashes of water. You find yourself smiling. When you finally leave the pool, your skin feels lighter, almost clean of the city's weight. You move to the caldarium, the hot chamber, and sit for a few minutes, letting the steam rise around you in thick clouds. Your breath becomes part of it, disappearing into the haze. There, in the heat and quiet, your mind drifts. You think about light again, about how it moves differently through air and water, through wax and glass. You wonder if the gods see all these forms as one, every spark, every flicker, every reflection part of the same great flame. You remember a fringe claim once made by a philosopher who passed through Rome, that light is not fire at all, but the breath of the universe made visible. You had laughed at it then, but now, sitting in the mist, the idea doesn't seem so foolish. When you finally emerge into the cool air of the outer hall, the world feels clearer, sharper. You dry your hands on a linen cloth, dress again, and retrieve your basket. The attendant nods absently as you leave, his eyes half closed in the drowsy rhythm of morning. Outside, the city is awake. The streets bustle again, merchants shouting, carts rattling, children weaving between legs. The chaos feels strangely gentle after the quiet of the baths. You make your way back toward the workshop, passing a pair of musicians playing near the fountain. One plucks a lyre, the other hums a tune, without words. As you walk, you catch glimpses of light everywhere. The sun glinting off a window, the reflection of torches still burning in the upper floors of the insulae, the thin sheen of water on the stones underfoot. Every bit of it reminds you of your work, of the way fire lives in the smallest things. By the time you reach your shop, the warmth of the day has begun to return. The air smells again of wax and wood. You open the shutters and set the first candle of the day on the window ledge. Its flame catches instantly, small but sure. You stand for a moment, watching how it bends toward the morning breeze. Then you smile, turn back to your tools, and begin again. It is quieter than normal, too. The markets have not yet begun their usual clamor. A few women sweep their doorsteps, and the baker's first loaves are only now beginning to smoke in the ovens. Even the city seems to be moving slower, as if recovering from something. You carry a small basket of trimmed candles and make your way toward the baths, not the grand ones of the senators, but the modest neighborhood bathhouse used by craftsmen like you. It is an indulgence, perhaps, but one you've earned. Wax clings to your hands and arms like invisible gloves. The only way to truly remove it is with heat and water. As you walk, you pass the fountain square. A few children play by the water's edge, their voices soft in the morning air. A stray dog follows you for a few steps, hopeful for crumbs, then loses interest and trots away. Rome feels younger at this hour, stripped of its noise and pride. The bathhouse sits between two tall buildings, its entrance framed by a carved stone lintel depicting nymphs and dolphins. Steam curls from the doorway, carrying with it the familiar scent of mineral water and soap. You step inside and hand a small coin to the attendant, who barely looks up from his stool. "Frigidarium first," he mutters. "Hot water's slow to heat today." You nod, moving through the dim corridor. The sound of dripping water echoes softly, and the floor beneath your feet is cool, slick with condensation. Inside the bath chamber, the air is thick and humid. A few men already sit in the shallow pool, their voices low, discussing taxes, trade, and the state of the city's aqueducts. The usual complaints, spoken with the same tone as prayer. You set your basket down and slip into the water. It stings at first, then welcomes you fully. The heat seeps into your arms and shoulders, loosening muscles that have been tight for weeks. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling your pulse slow. For a while, no one speaks directly to you. The murmurs of conversation wash over you like the water itself. Then, from your left, a familiar voice says, I heard the temple of Juno burned bright last night. You turned slightly. It is Cassius, the lamp maker, his hair damp and slicked back. He smiles faintly. They say the candles held till dawn. You nod. They did their duty. He chuckles. As always, the priests never thank the light, only the gods it serves. You shrug. That's how it's always been. He leans back, stretching. Still, the flame obeys you. That's something. You smile faintly at that, though you say nothing more. Historians still argue whether the Roman baths were places of true rest or just another form of business, where merchants bargained, politicians schemed, and gossip moved faster than water. For you, though, it is neither. It is a pause. A rare moment when the city forgets to demand. You sink deeper into the pool, letting the water cover your shoulders. The light filtering through the steam glows soft and golden, bending and flickering like fire seen through wax. You think briefly of your workshop, of the steady glow that fills it when all the candles burn at once. The bathhouse light feels different, wetter, slower, like flame dreaming underwater. A young man nearby complains about the taxes on olive oil, which makes the older men laugh. Someone else tells a story about a merchant caught smuggling perfume from Egypt. The voices drift, blending with the rhythmic splashes of water. You find yourself smiling. When you finally leave the pool, your skin feels lighter, almost clean of the city's weight. You move to the caldarium, the hot chamber, and sit for a few minutes, letting the steam rise around you in thick clouds. Your breath becomes part of it, disappearing into the haze. There, in the heat and quiet, your mind drifts. You think about light again, about how it moves differently through air and water, through wax and glass. You wonder if the gods see all these forms as one. Every spark, every flicker, every reflection part of the same great flame. You remember a fringe claim once made by a philosopher who passed through Rome, that light is not fire at all, but the breath of the universe made visible. You had laughed at it then, but now, sitting in the mist, the idea doesn't seem so foolish. When you finally emerge into the cool air of the outer hall, the world feels clearer, sharper. You dry your hands on a linen cloth, dress again, and retrieve your basket. The attendant nods absently as you leave, his eyes half closed in the drowsy rhythm of morning. Outside, the city is awake. The streets bustle again, merchants shouting, carts rattling, children weaving between legs. The chaos feels strangely gentle after the quiet of the baths. You make your way back toward the workshop, passing a pair of musicians playing near the fountain. One plucks a lyre, the other hums a tune without words. As you walk, you catch glimpses of light everywhere. The sun glinting off a window, the reflection of torches still burning in the upper floors of the insulate, the thin sheen of water on the stones underfoot. Every bit of it reminds you of your work, of the way fire lives in the smallest things. By the time you reach your shop, the warmth of the day has begun to return. The air smells again of wax and wood. You open the shutters and set the first candle of the day on the window ledge. Its flame catches instantly, small but sure. You stand for a moment, watching how it bends toward the morning breeze. Then you smile, turn back to your tools, and begin again. The sun sits high now, the city shimmering in its full brightness, yet somehow the workshop remains dim. You have drawn the shutters halfway to keep the heat out, but the light still slips through in thin beams that strike the air like golden strings. Dust floats lazily within them. The wax pot hums softly, bubbling in its slow rhythm. You sit at your table, shaping the last few candles from yesterday's batch, smoothing imperfections with a small bronze blade. Outside, the sounds of Rome swell and fade like the sea. Chatter, wheels, laughter, a hawker's call. Every sound has its place in the city's endless conversation. You are halfway through trimming the next candle when a shadow falls across your doorway. You look up to see a man standing there. Not a merchant, not a priest, but someone in between. His tunic is plain, but his manner deliberate. He carries a scroll tucked beneath his arm, its seal broken, its edges smudged with ink. "Are you the one who makes light for the temples?" he asks. You nod slowly. "I've made a few flames in my time." He steps inside, eyes flicking over your tools, your molds, your shelves. "Good. I was told you're a man who understands the nature of fire." You smile faintly. "I understand how not to burn my fingers." That's a start. He doesn't laugh. He unrolls the scroll and places it on your table. "I am a philosopher," he says, almost defensively. "Some call me a student of Seneca, though the Senate would rather I were no student of anyone." You glance at the scroll filled with quick, slanted writing. "So what brings philosophy to a candle shop?" "Debate," he says, "and perhaps understanding. Tell me, what is light to you?" The question is asked simply, but his tone makes it sound heavier than stone. You tilt your head, pretending to think, though the answer comes easily. "Light is what stands between us and fear." He studies you carefully. "And fear is," you set down your blade, "the absence of work." He frowns, then smiles as if unsure whether you're joking. "Practical, typical of craftsmen." You shrug. "Practical keeps the city alive. Philosophers keep it entertained." He laughs finally, a genuine sound, quiet and rough. "Perhaps both are needed. But tell me this, if light is what stands between us and fear, then what stands between light and its own end?" You look toward the small candle burning beside the pot. Its flame leans toward the air, wavering. "Wax," you say, "always wax. The same thing that gives it life takes it away." He nods thoughtfully. "So the maker of light also becomes its destroyer." "Always," you reply softly. "That's the rule." He watches you for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "The priests would not like your answer." "The priests," you say, "don't have to make wax behave in the summer heat." He chuckles, rolling the scroll back up. "You're wiser than you pretend, candle maker." Before you can answer, another voice comes from the doorway, calm, melodic, and carrying the faint authority of ritual. You both turn. A priest stands there, draped in white, his gold pendant gleaming faintly in the dim light. "Philosopher," he says coolly, "I didn't expect to find you in a workshop." The philosopher smiles thinly. "I go where the truth hides." And truth hides in craft. The priest steps forward, his sandals whispering against the stone. Or in faith you stand, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. The two men face each other across your table, the philosopher's hand resting lightly on the scroll, the priest's on the hilt of his belt. You speak of light, the priest says, yet you see only its shadow. The gods gave us flame as a gift, a symbol of their breath. To control it is to honor them. The philosopher tilts his head, or to rival them. A man who can create light needs no god to grant it. The priest narrows his eyes. Be careful, teacher. The city has little patience for blasphemy. Blasphemy, the philosopher replies. is only the sound of a mind trying to think in a loud world. You raise your hands slightly. Gentlemen, you say, my wax burns better in silence. Arguments make poor air for candles. They both glance at you, then back at each other. For a long moment, neither speaks. The priest's jaw tightens. The philosopher's eyes soften. Then, as if remembering where they are, both step back. The priest exhales first. You make candles for the temple, he says to you. Do not forget where your loyalty lies. You nod slowly. My loyalty lies with the flame. Father, it burns the same for all. He seems unsatisfied with that answer, but lets it pass. Without another word, he leaves, the sound of his sandals fading down the street. The philosopher lingers a little longer. You speak truth more plainly than you know, he says quietly. Be careful with it. Truth and fire share one nature, both spread when touched. He tucks the scroll back under his arm and leaves as well. For a few minutes, the workshop feels different. The air seems charged, as if the conversation has left behind a spark. You sit again, staring at the small candle still burning on your table. Its flame hasn't moved, perfectly still and indifferent to the debate that just passed. Historians still argue whether philosophy and faith ever truly coexisted in Rome, or if they merely took turns pretending to listen. You wonder if perhaps both were just reflections of the same light, different shapes, same fire. You lean forward and breathe gently toward the candle. The flame bends, then steadies again. You don't care about truth or gods. You whisper, you only care about air. The wax drips in slow, deliberate folds. You pick up your knife again and return to work. The rhythm of scraping and trimming fills the silence once more. Later, when the sun begins to fade, you step outside. The philosopher and the priest are gone, but their words linger somewhere in the hum of the street. You look up at the skyline, where smoke from hundreds of hearths curls upward, each one a little tongue of living light. You smile faintly. There, you murmur, that's Rome's philosophy, flame enough for everyone. And as dusk settles, you light another candle in the window, a quiet offering to thought, faith, and the steady patience that lies between them. The night settles deep and slow. You have finished the day's orders, stacked neatly along the back wall, each candle wrapped in linen, each waiting to travel toward its own small destiny. The workshop is clean again, the floor swept, the tools polished, the molds cooled and silent. The only light comes from a single flame resting near your hand. Its glow soft and even, painting the walls in amber. You sit quietly at your bench, too tired to move, but too content to sleep. The fire hums faintly inside the small bronze pot, its reflection flickering in the metal. The smell of beeswax lingers in the air, faintly sweet and calming. This is your favorite hour, the one between exhaustion and peace. Rome has quieted outside. The vendors have gone, the children are home, and even the taverns hum in softer tones. The city is still awake, yes, but slower now, gentler. You pick up one of the final molds for the night, a tall cylinder meant for the temple, though it won't be delivered until morning. The wax has cooled enough to release. You tap the sides gently with a stick, listening for that hollow sound that tells you it's ready. Then you turn it over and let the candle slide free into your hand. It's perfect, smooth, firm, the wick centered and clean. You turn it slowly, admiring how the light from the flame bends along its curve. You never tire of that sight, the way light clings to its own source, as if unwilling to let go. You trim the base and press it gently into a holder. Then, for no reason at all, you light it. The new flame joins the old, both steady, both whispering against the air. You watch as the light grows a little stronger, filling the room with warmth. Two flames, one feeding, one listening. It's a conversation, in a way. Historians still argue whether ancient craftsmen like you thought of their work as art. Most call it trade, a matter of habit and repetition. But sitting here, watching the flames bend toward one another, you think maybe it is both. A rhythm of hands, a patience of heart. Art and work are the same when done with care. From the street outside comes the faint echo of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. You pause, listening. The sound stops just beyond your door. A moment later, there's a gentle knock, 3 soft taps, like someone asking permission rather than demanding entry. You open it to find a boy, no more than 12, dressed in the plain tunic of a servant. His eyes are wide, his face pale under the torchlight. "Master Candlemaker," he asks. "Yes, what is it?" "The priestess sent me," he says quickly. "She needs light for a private ceremony tonight. The temple is closed to the public. She said only you would understand how to make the flame calm." You nod, not questioning. "Wait here." You return to the table and gather for small candles, the kind that burn cleanly and steadily, with little smoke. You test the wicks, trimming them to even lengths. As you pack them into a cloth, the boy fidgets near the door. "Is it true," he asks nervously, "that the gods can see through the flames?" You glance at him. Some say they can. Others say the flames see for them. He frowns, not quite understanding, but nods anyway. "The priestess said the goddess must not see fear in the light." You tie the bundle carefully and hand it to him. "Then these will not tremble. Tell her that." He bows clumsily and disappears into the night, his sandals pattering softly against the stones. You watch until his small figure fades into the alley's darkness. Then you close the door and return to the table. The 2 candles you lit earlier burn side by side, their flames touching now and then before parting again. You stare at them, thinking of the temple's silent halls. The priestess standing before the statue of Juno, her prayers echoing between marble columns. The idea comforts you that somewhere out there, your work continues to live. You pour the final bit of wax from the pot into a mold, the very last of the night. The pot hisses as it empties, the sound like a long sigh. You set it aside and rub your hands together, sticky with residue. The smell of warm wax fills the room again. As you wait for the last candle to cool, you take out the small bronze charm the priestess gave you days ago, the crescent moon of Juno. It catches the candlelight, reflecting it in tiny golden flashes. You place it on the table beside the flame, watching how the light curls around it. A breeze sneaks through the cracks in the shutters, and both candles flicker at once. You still your breath, watching carefully. The wicks steady themselves again after a moment, as if remembering their duty. You smile. "Good," you whisper. "That's how you endure." You think about endurance often these days, how the wax gives itself to flame, how flame gives itself to air, how air carries it away into nothing. It feels like the city itself, burning through every day without pause. A strange calm fills you. You lean back, eyes half closed, letting the rhythm of the flame draw you in. There is a pattern to its movement, a pulse that almost feels alive. You wonder if that's what people see when they talk about divinity, not the gods themselves, but the way light moves like something breathing. A faint knock interrupts your thoughts again, but it's lighter this time, almost hesitant. You open the door to find Marcellus, the olive oil trader, once more. His cloak drips with dew. Still working? He asks with a grin. Almost done, you reply. He glances inside, eyes landing on the 2 burning candles. You know, he says, I passed the temple just now. They're glowing brighter than I've ever seen. Must be your handiwork. You nod modestly. Perhaps the goddess was pleased. Marcellus chuckles. Or perhaps you've learned to bribe her properly. He hands you a small jar. For tomorrow, he says, fresh press. For cleaner flames. You take it gratefully. And what do you want in return this time? Nothing, he says. Consider it thanks. My wife lit one of your candles last night. She said the room felt safe for the first time in months. You pause, caught by the weight of his tone. Then, I'm honored. He nods once, smiles, and steps back into the night. You close the door again. The last candle in the mold has cooled enough to free. You pull it out, hold it up to the light, and smile faintly. Perfect, you light it, adding its soft glow to the others. 3 flames now, swaying gently together. The room fills with golden warmth, the shadows melting into the walls. The workshop feels less like a place of labor and more like a sanctuary. You whisper quietly, rest well, little fires. Tomorrow you'll belong to the goddess. And for a moment, surrounded by your creations, you could almost believe that the flames are listening. The city is quieter than you have ever heard it. A fog has rolled in from the Tiber, wrapping the Subura in pale grey silk. The streets glisten faintly under the torchlight, and even the dogs have gone silent. Inside your workshop, the morning feels suspended, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You stand beside your work table, gazing at the final batch of candles lined up neatly in their cloth wrappings. The room smells of beeswax, ash, and faint smoke from the night's last flame. Every tool, every mold, every scar on your bench tells a story, not of greatness, but of repetition. You run your fingers over the grooves worn deep into the wood, traces of decades spent shaping light. You reach for the small clay cup and pour yourself the last of yesterday's water. It's warm and metallic from sitting overnight, but it wakes you enough to move. The time has come to deliver the temple order. You pack each candle carefully into the wicker basket, separating the larger ones from the slender votive. The air outside still feels damp and cold, carrying the faint sound of cartwheels rolling on wet stone. When you open the door, the fog breathes into the room like a living thing. You lift the basket and step out into it. The walk to the Temple of Juno takes you through the quieter streets of dawn, the ones that belong to laborers, bakers, and sweepers. The air is thick enough to blur the edges of buildings. Figures move like ghosts, voices soft, almost shy. You hear the occasional murmur of a greeting, but mostly walk in silence. When you reach the temple steps, the marble is slick with dew. The great bronze doors stand half open, and 2 young acolytes wait by the entrance. They bow slightly when they see you, their faces still pale from lack of sleep. Are these the candles for the goddess? One asks, his voice barely above a whisper. You nod, setting down the basket. 50, as promised, and 10 smaller ones, as thanks. They lift the basket together, careful, reverent, almost afraid to touch what you've made. One of them glances at you with a hint of gratitude. The priestess said, "Your flame does not waver." You smile faintly. That's because it's patient, not proud. They disappear inside with the load, leaving you alone on the steps. The fog thickens around the temple's columns, softening their edges until they seem to dissolve into the air. For a moment, it feels as if the whole building is floating, a shrine of stone and vapor. You sit on the bottom step, breathing in the cool morning. The quiet hum of distant chanting drifts out from within the temple. The rhythm familiar now after years of listening from afar. You close your eyes, imagining the hall beyond, the statue of Juno gleaming faintly in the torchlight. Your candles standing in their bronze holders, the flames trembling like living prayers. Historians still argue whether faith in Rome was real devotion or just habit, another tradition carried out for the sake of order. You've never cared for the question. To you, faith and craft have always been the same. Both begin with the hands, both end in silence. When the chanting fades, you rise, brush the dust from your tunic, and begin the walk back home. The fog has started to lift, revealing the first pale sunlight. A few shopkeepers open their shutters. The air smells of bread again, and somewhere a cockerel calls, late as usual. You pass by the fountain square. Children are beginning to play there, tossing pebbles into the water, their laughter echoing faintly off the walls. A baker waves to you as he pulls fresh loaves from the oven. You nod back, smiling. Rome, once again, has woken. When you reach your workshop, the door creaks open as if welcoming you. The inside feels strangely large, emptier without the rows of candles waiting to be finished. You sit at your table, stretching your fingers, feeling the faint stiffness that never truly leaves. You light one small candle, not for work, but for company. The flame climbs gently up the wick, its glow soft and constant. You watch it without thought. The quiet hum of the street filters through the shutters, wagons rolling, voices calling, the heartbeat of the city resuming its steady rhythm. You think of all the flames you've made, thousands, maybe tens of thousands, all now burned away, melted into the air. Yet, somehow, they remain. Every temple prayer, every night vigil, every simple meal eaten by candlelight owes a fraction of its glow to your hands. You smile at the thought. That's enough immortality for me, you whisper. You reach for the small bronze charm, the crescent moon given by the priestess, and hang it by the window. It catches the light perfectly, glowing faintly against the pale morning. You let the sight fill you with quiet satisfaction. You tidy the table one last time. The pots are clean, the tools in their places, the air warm with the faint perfume of cooled wax. You sit again, fold your hands, and rest your eyes on the small flame. It burns steady, calm, and silent, the way you always meant it to. Outside, the city moves on. Inside, the candle breathes gently, keeping its promise. Now the work is done, and the day begins to fade. The air grows cooler, softer. The hum of the city quiets to a murmur, and even the light seems slower now, stretching thin across the rooftops before folding into the horizon. Inside the small workshop, the last candle still burns, its flame calm, unhurried, patient. The wax has melted into a shallow pool, its edges glowing faintly like gold in water. You can almost hear it whisper as it breathes, a soft rhythm that matches your own. The city outside blurs into stillness. The market is silent, the tavern's closing, and even the temple bells have finished their calls. Only the faint crackle of the candle remains, small, steady, like the heartbeat of the night itself. You sit quietly beside it, no words left, no thoughts to shape. The air smells of warmth and faint honey. You watch the flame sway once, twice, then find its balance again. Every candle you've ever made has ended this way, quiet, slow, gentle. It gives until there is nothing left to give, and even then, it leaves behind a trace of light. You take comfort in that, in the small truth that nothing made with care ever truly disappears. The wax softens, the flame bends lower. The room grows darker, but not empty. There's still warmth in the air, still memory in the walls. You breathe slowly, matching the candle's rhythm, letting the quiet settle into your bones. The flame flickers once more, steadying before it fades. And as it goes out, so too does the day, soft and complete. Sleep well now. The light will wait for you.